So my background is actually in meteorology, and I'm currently working on my master's in emergency management, if you're wondering my expertise level. When I was putting this together was a few days ago before Hurricane Harvey really ramped up. So I don't want to hit everything too hard because we're seeing it all right now and seeing how important it all really is to be prepared and what can really happen and the effects of, everything. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of, hurricanes, how they form, where they move, and what they can produce, which we're unfortunately seeing. So can anybody find the hurricane on this picture? Yes, it is. Actually, it's in the Atlantic, right off the coast of Florida. Anybody know which hurricane this is?
Isabel?
Nope.
Andrew?
Sandy, back in 2012. So there's some really key ingredients that hurricanes need to form. Warm water is the most important thing. They can't really form out in the northern Atlantic at all. They really need warm water, over 80 degrees. They need a really moist atmosphere and environment. And they need low, so there's a wind called wind shear. I don't want to get too technical because it is my background, but there's wind called wind shear, which is the sideways movement of really strong winds up in the upper levels, and that will basically rip apart storms. So you need no sideways upper level wind movement, which is kind of contradictory to how storms actually are because they end up being so strong and tall. So hurricanes form off the coast of Africa. They start with a tropical wave, which is low pressure. They spin into a tropical depression when their winds are 39 miles per hour or less. They become then a tropical storm, and they're only then named at a tropical storm phase. And then they can have the potential to become a hurricane when they begin to move, continue across the Atlantic. In the northern hemisphere, they rotate counterclockwise, and in the southern hemisphere, they rotate clockwise. I wanted to throw this slide up because I think it's kind of important just to visualize that we're not in the clear. There's a history of hurricanes, coming right up the eastern coast, and when you look at it like this, and in my opinion, it really is impactful and gets my brain thinking that we should be prepared at all times for any hurricane threats. And I wanted to zoom in a little bit more. These are kind of hard to see, but these are all the historical hurricane tracks from 1859, I believe. The green ones are unnamed storms that were not very impactful, but Hurricane Isabel is on there. Do you know which one it is?
The yellow one that comes straight up the back?
It's actually the yellow one that is farthest to the left over, what is that? Harrisonburg in Virginia. So even though we think it came up the bay, the most impactful part of the hurricane came up the bay, but that actually is the track of the eye of the hurricane, which is kind of interesting to think about. Hurricanes can be categorized from category 1 to 5, and I think it's really important to note that even though hurricanes can be a category 5 out in the mid-Atlantic, they're really categorized by their strength at landfall. So Sandy was, at one point, I think its strongest was a category 3 over the Atlantic, but it actually was a tropical depression when it made landfall. So it's kind of a fun fact to think about. As I said earlier, there are stronger areas in hurricanes than others. This kind of, need to do a little math on it here, but if you think about the way this storm is moving, it's moving to the left, and when the storm rotates counterclockwise, the strongest winds kind of add up with that movement, and that's how you get the strongest area in the right front quadrant. And the back left quadrant is actually the least impactful in our hemisphere. Everyone know the difference between a watch and a warning? So a watch just means that you should really be paying attention to the fact that hurricanes might be coming your way. They're issued normally within 48 hours of landfall, and then a warning is issued within 36 hours. and that means you should take action and really be prepared. That's probably when we would be really ramping up in the EOC when we see those warnings come out. And I wanted to note that this year there's storm surge watches and warnings that the National Weather Service is going to issue. In the past, they didn't used to issue these, but I think the fact that these will be issued now may have more of an impact on our residents who live right on the coast, because if you're getting storm surge watch or warning, you're going to really get the gears turning that, oh my gosh, I might be in the path of something that's actually impactful to me. So again, the watches and the warnings just depend on the timing and the predictability. You know, if it definitely looks like it's going to happen, it'll be a warning. A watch is a little less serious. Hurricanes, Pack 5 hazards. Storm surge, which we've seen, is generally the leading cause of death, unfortunately, with hurricanes. Wind is a no-brainer. Hurricanes can have winds upwards of 175 miles an hour, and it can cause flying debris, roofs, signs, buildings, trees, so that's also really, really critical to think about. Tornadoes, if they form in hurricanes, would normally form out away from the eye of the storm. They would form in the outer rain bands, and so those you have to watch. It's not super likely that they happen, but they do happen, so it's something to not forget about. Waves and rip currents are really, really important, especially when we are on the bay here. And then the rain and the inland flooding is huge, as well as we're seeing down in Texas, right? So those are the 5 main hazards that come with hurricanes. I thought this slide was really cool because it actually shows you how storm surge happens. It's kind of a confusing graphic to look at, but if you just think about the storm, you know, moving over the water and pushing the water along with it, that's how you end up with storm surge, basically. It's pretty simple, but some people still, I mean, even myself sometimes, I'm like, how does that really happen? And that's how it happens. This website, floodsmart.gov, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but you can actually put in, excuse me, your address, where you live, your town, and see how vulnerable you are to flooding. So it's good for if you're a homeowner or if you have communities that you know may be really especially vulnerable. This is a good website to take down. So interestingly, this update, when the National Hurricane Center put out their forecast for the 2017 hurricane season back in the beginning of June, this yellow section of the above normal only had a 45% chance of having above normal numbers of storms for this year. And when they updated it on August 9th, just a few weeks ago, they increased that based on the history so far throughout the season, the way that storms are looking, and then future models. So, and now we're seeing how they were right, unfortunately.